So let's say you found a skeleton. How would you tell if it's a dinosaur? You personally, how would you decide?
Well, interesting question. I don't know. I'd have to do some research on that.
Hey everybody, welcome to Dapper Reacts number, 90-something? 96? Yep, 96. Tyson versus Ross is Modern Cosmology in Genesis. I am joined today by Vishanti and Dr. Kip Davis. Hello.
And
everybody.
doggos.
Yes, and
And
doggos.
doggos. Say hello, Layla.
What's the name of this doggo? What's this doggo's name? Oh. Very cute.
Oh.
What's the doggo's name again?
That's Layla.
Oh.
All right.
Layla.
Isn't that Arabic for night?
Yes.
Hebrew.
And
in Hebrew, okay.
So,
yeah, I know much more Arabic
but-
than Hebrew, so I always default to
There
isn't
you
that
go.
Arabic?
I didn't name that one.
Oh.
So that my wife named it, and she did not name her after the Hebrew night
No?
or the Arabian Nights.
Oh, okay.
So I'm pretty sure she named her after an Eric Clapton song.
That's why I was singing it, Layla.
Yeah, there you go. Right.
You know, it's okay.
Yes.
That's fine. So we are here today to take a look at a video. That...
Also, I'm here. Kip got an introduction, and you got distracted by the doggos.
I said I'm here with
Gosh.
Vishanti and Kip, and then we
Sorry.
just talked about the doggos.
That's okay. Kip and I independently are repping the yellow shirt gang today. So.
Yes.
Reppin' the yellow shirt gang. Yeah. I need to, sorry guys. I'm so ill prepared. I need to open up my chat window.
Uh-oh. Well, that's okay, because in the meantime, I will describe what's going on today. So first,
Awesome.
we are doing a drink and stream. We've already got 10 on the board. I will be taking those in just a second. But we are here to take a look at so there was a vlog, I guess, where a guy was interviewing Dr. Ross about a clip from an interview with Neil deGrasse Tyson. So this is like video super inception. We're going like 3 videos deep on this one. So, like, sorry about that. I don't know what that means for the timeline, but it'll be fine. And basically, so Neil deGrasse Tyson is going to give us his take on what about science you could reasonably glean from Genesis if all you had was Genesis. And Dr. Ross is going to take issue with this statement. And we're going to see if Dr. Ross or Dr. Tyson is giving the more reasonable take on that question. And that is one of the reasons why I've invited Dr. Kip Davis, because Dr. Kip Davis, like, I don't know, he has something to do with, like, the Bible professionally or something, I guess? Something like that?
Yeah.
Sort of.
Yeah, a little bit.
Sort of, a little bit, okay.
It's, I guess it depends. It depends too on how you define the Bible, which is.
I'm going to say that it is a collection of books, which, among other things, includes the book of Genesis.
This is true.
Okay. I don't think I've ever heard of the... I guess the Marcion canon didn't have Genesis, but other than that, I don't know if I've
I was gonna say
heard of any
Marcion.
scriptures.
But he was a heretic anyway, so...
Whatever.
So the title of this stream, my brain refuses to process the title of this stream for what it was intended. I keep seeing Tyson versus Ross, and my brain's going, wow, that Tyson versus Logan Paul fight last night was boring as hell.
Yeah,
God, wasn't it? But I mean, what do you expect from watching a 58-year-old man in a boxing?
No,
right?
and it wasn't the thing, because, like, if you watch, Mike came out and was, like, swinging for the fences, and then for whatever reason...
Just tuckered out.
Logan Paul just ran around him a bunch and tried to use his long arms to get some hits in.
Yeah.
It was so funny watching the technical, like, physical differences between them.
Well, you guys talk about that. I'm going to start doing the
boxing
drinks.
like his whole life. Okay. Tyson keeping his hands up the whole time, perfect form, like dodging, bobbing, and weaving. Like it was incredible to watch because, like, obviously professional.
Yes.
And Logan just keeping his hands down and taunting him and shit. And I'm like, you are clearly just not prepared to actually get in the ring with Mike Tyson. They shortened the rounds by a minute. They were wearing heavier gloves, which, yes, that does make a difference. And they were only going for 8 rounds instead of 10. And I obviously, I was sitting here screaming, Mike, fight back! But it's okay, because Paul only won on a few points, and that's embarrassing. So
here's the real question,
Team Iron
though.
Mike. Only for boxing, though.
If we make
'cause I know
enough
that he's
today, do you think we could
bad
pay
dude.
to have Neil deGrasse Tyson box Hugh Ross?
I would watch that, and I think it'd be way more interesting.
That
Yeah.
would be that would be much.
All right,
Yeah.
so
more interesting,
I got a
yes.
couple things here. Edwin M, who said that I'm going to go with he because Edwin is a masculine name. He wouldn't be here today, but he gifted 10 memberships. That's why we had 10 on the board already.
Aw.
And then Regios just gifted 10 more. So thank you very much. And I will take 10 more drinks. There's for some reason already a level on there, but whatever. So here's 1, 2.
Yeah, while he's counting those off, I want to say that I only, within the parameters of a fight, am Team Mike Tyson.
7.
Everything outside of that, yes, I grew up in the 90s. I'm well aware of his history with unsavory assault accusations and things like that. So don't support that. Just in a ring, Iron Mike.
I was low-key hoping that one fewer ear would leave that ring than entered, but it didn't happen.
Me too.
So-
Well, the way Tyson was chewing on his glove, I thought, oh man, he's holding it
Well, the
back.
one-
Like,
He's hungry.
he wants to,
Needs the
Yeah.
cartilage and
Yeah.
the blood.
So,
yeah,
se-
he craves
sexual
blood.
sexual assaulter Mike Tyson would be welcome at the SBL.
Well,
Just saying.
You know-
let's not get too far into that. Here we go, guys. We are
Yeah.
gonna hit play on this
Okay.
video, and we're gonna start with Neil deGrasse Tyson giving a take. Now it's not the full context. I don't know exactly where this is from, but let's see what Neil deGrasse Tyson has to say. Probably gonna pause after he's done talking and see if we have anything to say about that, and we'll continue on to the Hugh Ross bit.
If you knew nothing about science and you read, say, the Bible, the Old Testament, which in Genesis is an account of nature, that's what that is. And I said to you, give me your description of the natural world based only on this. You would say the world was created in 6 days and that stars are just little points of light, much lesser than the sun. And in fact, they can fall out of the sky, right? Because that's what happens during the Revelation.
All right, so he is
Doesn't-
mixing a
doesn't-
lot of
doesn't
different
happen in
areas.
Genesis,
Yeah, it doesn't
yeah.
happen in Genesis. But, you know, he did say the Bible as a whole, and most biblical canons that are Christian canons include both of those books. So, you know.
True enough. And I will say that I think, as someone who's read bits of this thing that we tend to call the Bible, as well as a bunch of things that maybe people don't call the Bible, I will say that I think he's right in the sense that the writer of Genesis, when he is describing the stars, the Kokavim in the heavens, this is kind of what he has in mind. A common term used throughout the Hebrew text with reference to the stars is the host of heaven. That's above, yeah. And this idea is drawn from the notion that those are actual divine beings up there who are ready to fight at God's command. So I'll say, even though this isn't explicitly spelled out in Genesis chapter 1 for a variety of reasons, I think the intent is certainly there.
Yeah.
Also, question from the chat for Dr. Kip. Maya Atkinson is asking if you're wearing a Crown Royal bag on your head.
A bag?
I feel like it's a beanie, but...
It's neither a bag nor a beanie. It's a toque.
Oh, well, that's too Canadian for my American-centric
That's too
audience.
Canadian.
Toque.
I might be wearing flannel, but I'm not that Canadian.
That's not even a word in
Everyone-
American English.
Oh. Toque.
Toque. That's
Can we-
some weird
Can
vowels
we
for that
go have some,
spelling.
like, beaver and moose in maple syrup later on? Some poutine?
No.
So,
but
I saw this meme that the beavers were dragging like branches across the road ready to build the wall to keep the Americans out. And I realized that If you had the beavers build a wall and the geese guard it, yeah, we're not getting in.
It's
You're
true,
not
that would be a
getting
pretty
in.
good border
No.
defense.
It
As opposed to what
absolutely would.
the current border defense, which is just a line where there aren't trees.
Pretty much.
Oh, we have a ditch actually.
Well, yes, Trudeau's ditch.
It's a.
Mhm.
I live like 8 kilometers from the border. That's for
Like
y'all's
most Canadians.
y'all's Americans. True, right? That's what? That's
What,
like
like
5
4 and a
miles?
half, 5 miles.
Something like that, yeah.
Something like that.
Yeah.
And that's what we've got. There is a road that I can get on and drive all the way to the coast. And it's called Zero Avenue. And on the other it literally is right on the border, which is a ditch.
Yeah.
All the way. And on the other, it's kind of wild because on the other side of the ditch, there's another American version of Zero Avenue. So yeah, fun fact. Sorry, I have to do this now. A few years ago, there was like a big illegal pot operation busted. I think this was before marijuana became legal in Canada. But there was a big pot operation that was busted, and these people were had dug a tunnel underneath the border, and they were moving product back and forth just underneath Zero Avenue. It's pretty.
So
cool.
you don't just need a wall. You also need like a moat or something, so the tunnels would get flooded.
Well, I mean, we've got the start of a moat, right?
Okay.
Like that ditch is,
Just gonna fill it with water, so anyone who tunnels under it gets flooded.
Living where I do, it fills naturally.
Oh, okay, that's good.
With water. So.
All right, well, we're gonna get a little bit more Tyson in here because I don't think he's gonna teach us about like trans-Canadian smuggling tunnels. I think he has something else to tell us about.
One of the signs that the second coming is that the stars will fall out of the sky and land on Earth. To even write that means you don't know what those things are. You have no concept of what the actual universe is. So everybody who tried to make proclamations about the physical universe based on Bible passages got the wrong answer. So what happened was when science discovers things and you want to stay religious, or you want to continue to believe that the Bible is unerring, what you would do is, you would say, well, let me go back to the Bible and reinterpret it. Then you'd say things like, oh, they didn't really mean that literally, they meant that figuratively. So this whole sort of reinterpretation of how figurative the poetic passages of the Bible are, came after science showed that this is not how things unfolded.
So I will say,
in some parts, yes.
Yeah,
in some parts.
Generally, I do think that there are some areas where a misunderstanding of how the universe works is still being used in a poetic sense. Like I'd say, like in things like apocalyptic literature, which is definitely not supposed to be taken as like a literal thing that's happening or about to happen. It's, there's a lot of figurative language in there, but it assumes an incorrect view of how the world works.
Medieval Judaism, because even those commentators are like, yeah, this isn't literally true. Like, even the commentators like Rashi and Maimonides will talk about Genesis and be like, those aren't literal 6 days. Don't read them literally.
So I guess
you are in error if you are doing that. So
I guess what I'm saying is like
100% based on like, oh, we discovered science, so people decided it was figurative. Like, no, people are already doing that.
Yeah, like I don't think the author of Revelation was telling people to expect a literal third of the stars to fall to the ground. However, his idea that that was an image that he could conjure up is based on the idea that that is something that could even conceivably happen. That a star could fall and is small enough to actually impact on the ground and not that be the Earth falling into a star.
Let's get real here, okay? For a couple of minutes. So I last night and today I've been doing some recording work with my friends Dr. Josh Bowen and Paul Enns, more famously Apologia, right? We're doing a mega like huge slavery responding to biblical slavery video. It's going to be a really big one, but this has come up. Okay. This is what modern readers of the Bible tend to do. When there are places in the text that interfere with our sensibilities, what we think about the world or about life or about what ought to be happening or happened, the one of the common retreats, one of the earliest retreats from that is to make this claim of, well, that's just figurative, that's just symbolic, that's just, I don't know, what have you. And
Convenient.
it's a convenience, yes. And my tendency within these sorts of discussions is to say, look, especially given the fact that a lot of these texts, a lot of the Bible texts are very old, written during the Iron Age in modern day Palestine, Israel, written during the Iron Age. We actually don't know how figuratively people imagine these things. Even someone like the writer of the Book of Revelation, how metaphorically, symbolically, figuratively were these images for him?
Well, we know he was using numerology to reference Nero without saying it explicitly. I would say at least a little bit. He's definitely doing at least a little bit of figurative language in there.
Absolutely, but you have to, at some point, we, the readers, are the ones who set that line, right? And say, well, it looks like, everything on this side of the line is symbolic, and everything on this is something that they actually, saw.
It's almost like everyone's negotiating with the text.
This is what we're all doing.
Yeah.
Right. And I think it's kind of silly to be making claims about an Iron Age document or Iron Age documents like those in the Bible and saying, well, this was definitely figurative, or this was definitely metaphorical, or they didn't actually think this. We don't know. We just don't know.
Yeah.
I mean, they might have. For all we know, people actually believed that stars were going to fall out of the sky and hit the earth at the, in the last days.
Or at least the ones who were taking Revelation seriously, because that was actually a fairly small portion of Christians at first. It was actually not a very popular book at first. Which, based on how it's gone since then, I wish it had stayed unpopular, if I'm being honest.
Right.
Yeah. Yeah. I feel like the Eastern Patriarchs should have held out strong in not including it in their canon lists. Instead, they just gave in. They were like, okay, fine.
So, listen, when I was 19 years old, I spent a year in New Zealand at like a discipleship training school. It wasn't even really a Bible school. And in one of our classes, we had a whole set of lectures on the Book of Revelation, and I was really excited about it because you're fascinated, you're interested by some of this bizarre stuff.
It's evocative.
In the Book of Revelation. Yeah, right. So I was excited about this, and the school brought in this absolute weirdo whose wife made watercolor paintings of all the scenes in the Book of Revelation. And then he played songs on his electric keyboard and sang them.
Oh,
all about the book.
That is strange.
Yeah, it was odd. But that's the kind of stuff that can happen.
Okay.
In an evangelical discipleship school.
I'm gonna hit play on this.
All right.
All right, so this is the actual podcast that we're doing. I don't know who this guy is.
What does that mean?
I think it's a reference to a part in a church service where everyone rises, and then there's a corporate prayer that's said.
They're showing a version of justice there, so I'm thinking they're actually referring to the courtroom, like when the judge comes in and they say all rise and the judge comes in.
But then we also have
there's no reason those are in conflict. But
that's true. We also have a Trinity knot, which I don't know. It could just be that this is a Christian nationalist podcast. I don't actually know. I don't know who Abdu
Is-
Murray is.
Who is you don't know who Abdu Murray is? I was going to ask, who is Abdu Murray?
He's
Chat,
the guy who runs this podcast.
get on it. Who is Abdu Murray?
Yeah.
Do my Googling for me.
Yeah. Google
I'm
for
in a
me, the
show.
host.
I
You probably
I
should have
can't
already
Google.
done that.
I'm
Just type into Google. Just do like Abdu Murray with.
that sounds like work.
Yeah, I mean,
I feel
yeah.
like it.
Friends, it's Abdu Murray, and you're joining me
Hello.
for All Rise, a podcast where we look at claims against and claims in favor of the Christian faith from a legal perspective, applying rules of evidence
Okay, so yeah, it is about a courtroom.
Oh, okay. There we go.
and trial procedure and how juries think, expert witnesses, and these
Nailed
kind of things
Mm.
to see if the objection
Oh, that makes sense because when I was downloading this, it was Hugh Ross was called in the title a quote expert witness. I was like, that's a really weird way to put it, but okay.
This
is
is a
worth water, or if the
legal.
claims
All
Right.
right.
Or at least we're using. I mean, look, we're probably just using the like theming and aesthetic of the idea of a courtroom. I don't think this guy thinks he's actually
Yeah.
putting on a trial.
I also have problems that justice wasn't blind, but whatever.
hold water. And the voice you just heard, or the video you just watched, was, of course, Dr. Neil deGrasse Tyson, a very, very popular
Otherwise
scientist and-
known as Satan.
Otherwise, Mr. No Fun.
Well, yeah, he is that. So here's the thing, right? I'm not normally a big like booster of Neil deGrasse Tyson, mostly because I feel like he spends way too much of his time trying to make sure no one has fun in harmless ways, like celebrating the new year. And he's like, this is an arbitrarily defined period of time based on how long it takes the Earth to go around the sun. Like, yeah, Neil, we know, Neil,
shut up.
We all know.
Or his whole thing of like, I did the math, like about how fast Santa and his reindeer would have to be traveling to get across the whole place. Shut up, man! It's Christmas.
No one cares. We all understand that
People
Santa
have
can't
fun!
physically do this. I'm not trying to teach kids about relativity when I'm telling them Santa's going to come and give them their Game Boy or whatever
Have
it
you
is the kids are
seen
playing
the
with
meme
these
where
days.
someone's quoting the monologue from Romeo and Juliet, where it's like, what is it? The East and Juliet is the sun, and Neil deGrasse Tyson like
No,
kicks
she's
in the door.
not.
No, she's not.
Yeah, exactly. So yeah,
Corona is the
overall,
East and Juliet is the sun. Is that the way it goes? I haven't read that play in a very long time.
I believe, yeah, I would have to double check. It's been a while. for me,
Whatever.
too.
That was never one of my favorite Shakespeare's. I liked the gritty, grimdark stuff like Titus Andronicus. That's my favorite Shakespeare
Okay.
play, which probably tells you a lot about me.
I have Hamlet in the original Klingon on my shelf. We should do a dramatic reading sometime.
Nice.
It's actually on one side, it's actually the original Shakespeare in English, and then the other side, it's the Klingon, and they're actually not a 1-to-1 translation, and so
Well, of course.
it's a little weird to see what choices they made. So anyway,
I was in the 10th grade in the 1980s, and in our English class we read Romeo and Juliet, and then we got to watch the movie, which was made in the 1970s, and it featured frontal nudity.
whoa, in school.
Oh no!
In school.
Wow.
You know what's funny? Speaking of that, there was I think it was my senior year English literature course where we were discussing like Middle Ages English lit. And we got to like Arthurian legends and things like that. And our teacher showed us Excalibur and warned us like, hey, this has got some adult content. Can y'all be mature about it? And of course, we're seniors. We're like, of course we can be mature about it. And there's a literal ass sex scene in it. And we were all like, hee, getting all so she got pissed and turned it off. And
Oh,
Yeah.
really? Oh,
yep. I mean,
so,
Well, here we go.
media and other places,
Okay.
where he spoke on Moyers and Company on January 2014, talking about essentially his views on many things, but specifically the Bible. And if you saw or you listened to his argument, what you noticed is that his argument is essentially this: if you know nothing of science and you read the Bible, you would go wrong.
Yeah, that does seem to be an accurate statement.
Yep.
I would agree with Neil on this one.
for hundreds of years, this seems to have
Because
been true.
let's
right?
remember, there have been a lot of societies throughout time that have taken these texts very seriously and who were persistently incorrect about their view of the cosmos. Persistently incorrect.
Yes,
And in no way did reading the Bible help them fix that.
demonstrably incorrect.
We have to remember that is a thing that happened historically. No matter what else Hugh Ross tells us about that, historically, the Bible has not helped advance cosmology. It just hasn't.
You would not
even a little
actually-
bit.
I would say that I don't tend to agree with the people who say that it's been a huge hindrance to things like astronomy and cosmology. I don't actually think that's the case. But it certainly hasn't been a help either. So,
get an accurate depiction of how the universe came about or how nature actually operates. And that as time has gone on and as science has uncovered the reality of the world around us, that the Bible has had to be reinterpreted to fit the evidence as opposed to the evidence actually fitting with the Bible.
which again is just a historical reality. As we've learned more about the world around us, people have changed how they interpret the Bible, which I'm not going to tell you can't do. But remember, the point of this is if all you had was the texts. And I think for this we can safely say the 66 book Protestant canon. Is everyone okay with that for now?
Yeah, that's pretty likely.
Okay. Because, I mean, this guy doesn't strike me as like a Catholic or Orthodox or even less Ethiopian Christian who's going to be trying to go with a wider canon here. So, and I know Hugh Ross is a Protestant, so.
Perhaps not.
Yeah. I don't think we need to worry about like Enoch or Tobit or anything like that.
Judas.
But honestly,
Yeah.
if you're not drawing the Book of Enoch into your biblical cosmology, you are missing out.
Yeah, there's a lot of fun stuff.
Tell
there.
in the
I'm
original
telling you.
Ge'ez.
No. Oh, Vishanti, no. In the original, Enoch was written in Aramaic, y'all.
Yeah.
It was.
There are
So-
translations.
But the most
into
complete
Ge'ez.
versions are
Fair
in
enough.
Ge'ez.
Fair enough.
so-
Actually, I need to
Fair
find out
enough.
what that consonant is between the two E's in Ge'ez, because I don't actually know that it's a glottal stop. It might actually be a voice pharyngeal fricative.
I mean, it
You
could be.
should-
I'm used to seeing an apostrophe when people want to
Well,
indicate
that's
a
usually what's
glottal
there.
stop. So
you
I've
should
been wrong with
have
that. I don't know.
you should have Dr. Matt Munger on your show to discuss whether or not that is a glottal stop.
I mean, I can probably just look it
You
up.
just asked him to talk about linguistics.
Hashtag
You
not a
kn-
linguist.
it's Dapper Dinosaur. Come on. But yes, Dapper, you should absolutely. I will drop a bug in his ear at SBL if you don't remember to like reach out to him.
By the way, it is in fact a
Mm,
here.
Yay! Excellent.
nice.
Yeah, hashtag not a linguist. That's right.
Does Googling the word Ge'ez make me a linguist all of a sudden?
Yes.
Okay.
Well, we were just talking about you having Matt Munger on to talk about glottal stops, so
Well, not just
not a
glottal stops.
linguist.
All right, here we go.
Had predicted. Now, that's quite an objection. And the question that we have to ask ourselves is a couple of things. Does Dr. Tyson actually have the foundation to actually make the objection? Is he the kind of expert we would expect to be able to make a biblically interpretation?
Are you
Yes. Yes.
I mean, in this
is the
case,
show
yeah.
over? Yes.
Yeah.
That's it, right?
I mean,
yes.
roll
The answer
credits.
is yes.
Like, look, if I wanted an in-depth discussion of like the textual history and like authorial intent behind Genesis 1, he wouldn't be my first stop. But in order to say that, yeah, this book wouldn't help you like advance cosmology, he's perfectly adequate for that. Like,
Is a guy who studies the field we're talking about qualified to make actual objections? Yes.
right. And the thing is,
Wow,
it's not
these
like the
people.
Bible is it's not like cosmology is the only field where the Bible's not going to help you out much, right? Like, if you wanted to be a baker and you decided to base all of your ideas about baking on the Bible, you're probably not going to go well. It's not going to go too well because there's not much in
So,
there.
I'll go so far as to say this. I would even suspect that Neil deGrasse Tyson has possibly even read maybe a couple of books on written by critical biblical scholars.
Certainly possible.
And I'm also willing to bet that maybe Hugh Ross hasn't. Just saying. I don't know.
I don't know,
I-
actually.
I don't know, but
So I know that Hugh Ross's thing is...
I don't see the
is-
evidence.
Well, so I know Hugh Ross's thing is being an old Earth Christian creationist apologist. And so I'll give him this. He certainly does reject far less science than, say, Ken Ham or Ken Tobin does, right? He's far more right about far more things than either of those two guys. So overall, I have fewer problems with Hugh Ross. But, we'll see what he says.
Objection based on biblical interpretation. Is he a biblical scholar? He clearly is a scientist.
He's not a
clearly-
theologian.
Yeah, so there's a few things. There is a difference between a biblical scholar and a theologian, and also
Thank you.
You don't need to be either of those to make a reasonable assessment as to whether or not the Bible's going to help you about like the Big Bang or the age of the universe or the shape of the Earth.
I am interested now at this point how Abdu Murray introduces Hugh Ross. Is Hugh Ross a biblical scholar?
No, he is in fact an astronomer and cosmologist.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
A qualified scientist. And we're not challenging that. What we are challenging is whether or not this argument actually is valid. Now,
remember, it wasn't actually an argument. It was just a statement of Neil deGrasse Tyson's correct belief that the Bible wouldn't help you with science.
Before I go on, here's the legal sort of hook for today's episode.
Ooh,
essentially what Dr. Tyson is basically saying is that the Bible is clear. It's unambiguous. It can't be interpreted any other way than basically the way it's sometimes.
No, that is exactly what.
Is that what he's saying?
Oh, let him
objection!
Let him finish. We'll let him finish the sentence.
Okay, let him cook.
All right.
And was created in 6 literal days, and that stars fall from the sky, and all these kind of things, and that the even the sequence of Genesis in the first 11 verses. Is the actual sequence in which the world was created, which creates problems because you get ideas like plants.
All right, that's enough. He's doing a little rambling. That is not what Neil deGrasse Tyson said, at least in the clip. Now, I don't know if he went on later to expand into that statement, but if all you're going to show us is a clip where he says, if all you had was the Bible, then you would not get modern science out of it. And then you're going to say, well, what Neil deGrasse Tyson actually just said was there's only one way to interpret the Bible. No, that's not what he said at all. In fact, he explicitly pointed out that other people have come up with other interpretations of it after the fact based on science, which, I don't really care if that's what you want to do. If you want to tell me that's what the author intended, now we might have a problem. But if you're going to tell me like that's just how I read it for my own devotional purposes, okay, I don't care. That's fine. But that's not what Neil deGrasse Tyson said. And this guy is already lying about that. So we're going to take a quick drink for that. Because,
I'll take a drink for that.
So will I.
Plus, by the way, in case anyone's wondering, I am drinking a one of the zero sugar monsters that comes in the white can, but with a shot of vodka poured into it. So
I'm drinking coffee, and I'm drinking it out of my Tim Hortons mug.
Nice,
which is lovely.
Didn't Burger King buy Tim Hortons or something?
I don't know. I actually, the only thing I like about Tim Hortons is the honey dip donuts, which are just like a classic glazed. I don't know why they call them honey dipped. It's weird. And the coffee mugs, and that's it. The coffee at Tim Hortons is shit, y'all. It is. Yes.
I was gonna say, do they sell their own beans?
I believe so, but because the coffee at Tim Hortons is shit, I don't know.
So why is it so popular?
Because here
I think a bunch of it is Canadian nationalism.
Because Canadians are not immune to nationalism and propaganda.
Okay. Yeah. That's fair.
Yes, the Tim Hortons has wrapped themselves in the Canadian flag and somehow convinced the country that that this is what Canada is, and I.
Tim Horton himself bathes in maple syrup daily.
He's dead, eh?
Well, that doesn't mean he's not getting bathed in maple syrup daily.
He's encased in maple syrup in the hopes that he will, crystallize like those insects caught in amber.
There you go. Actually, at that point, that's going to turn into maple candy, and he's just going to be encrusted in maple candy.
Yep.
Tim Horton was an average hockey player in the 1970s who played for the Buffalo Sabres, and he was killed in a car accident.
And he was the avatar of Canada.
Eventually, because honestly, this is Tim Hortons has been around for a long time, and nobody ever thought, the epitome of Canadiana until like the 90s. It's ridiculous.
All right, well, I'm going to hit play.
Being created and living and thriving without the ability to photosynthesize because
we're going to get to Hugh Ross today, I promise.
Created and all these kind of things. So his argument is basically, I object to using the Bible in any way to prove science under what I would call a loose analogy to the parole evidence rule.
I object. Can I just say I object to using Dapper and the South Wind in any way to prove science.
Objection sustained.
Yeah, that's sustained. I agree. We should not do that. Generally speaking, texts that weren't written as science treatises, and also texts from hundreds of years ago probably shouldn't be your basis for scientific investigation. Now, if it inspires your scientific investigation and then you use actual empirical evidence, hey, that's fine. Also, Roshana Jerkin Jello Keller, who's been a member for 14 months, says the Bible's flat Earth doesn't advance cosmology. Yes, yeah. Sorry, I'm confused by the. But yeah, no, yeah, of course it doesn't, because the Bible does assume a flat Earth, at least in the Old Testament. I'm willing to entertain arguments about the New Testament, given that at the time the spherical shape of the Earth was pretty well known. But yeah, and then people will say, "What about the mountain so high you could see all the kingdoms of the Earth?" Yeah, people only knew about less than one hemisphere of kingdoms that were around. So it would be a very, very tall mountain, but it's still physically possible under their conception of the world, which was still globe shaped. There was just a whole lot less known land, because you got to remember,
a reminder, chat. We've known that the Earth is spherical since at least 300 BC.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Hey, the flurfers are going to Antarctica, eh?
You heard that? Yeah, that's the plan.
The ones that don't cop out and just make up a million excuses because they know they're about to be proven wrong. It's gonna be delicious.
My favorite thing was that
they're losing their shit. What was it? It's hilarious.
Mm-hmm.
Was it Whitsitt who was coming up with all sorts of different excuses? And then every time they were like, "Yeah, we can do that." And he was like, "Okay, well, I don't want to go alone. I want to bring someone else." Like, "Okay, sure, we'll pay for that guy too."
Oh yeah, it was him and what's his face that has the Jeranism. He's like, well, I want all my expenses paid, and he was like, "All right, fine. Yeah, you'll cover my airfare. Yeah, and my food. Yeah."
Yeah, I'll say
and
this.
It's just he's running out of excuses, and I'm just sitting here like.
But it could cost $100,000 to get to Antarctica for some reason.
Yep. So yeah,
that's ridiculous.
I'll give Jaren this though. He's one of the few flat earthers who has stuck to his guns about the fact that if they see a midnight sun in Antarctica, that's a problem. Most of them have been trying to come up with reasons why it wouldn't be a problem, and Jaren is just like, no, that's an actual problem. We can't account for that if that happens.
Good for him, right?
Cognitive trifurcation in the chat is saying that most of the flirts are already crowing that, if you accept the trip, you're just being a paid shill and they were gonna eat their own. It's delightful.
There was that one woman who thought she had won a trip to Antarctica, but then it turns out that it was just a hoax, and then it was crowdfunded anyway, so she is going.
Crowdfunding, got it. Yeah.
So I'm excited for her because she actually seems enthusiastic about it. She's the only flurf who seems to really want to go, and she's also a nobody in the flurf community.
Yes.
So
man, I tell you, if people crowdfunded me going into Antarctica, that I would absolutely do it, and I would be super excited.
I wouldn't, and I'll bet you know why.
Yes.
Yeah, exactly. I don't ever want to be that cold, ever.
Oh yeah, I wouldn't be excited about being cold because I hate the cold. I hate it a lot, a lot.
I will trust that.
If you're
Michael
paying me to go to Antarctica, I'll handle it for a few days.
I'll just trust Michael Toon's report. If he says he saw it, okay.
I would go to work on my tan, guys.
I mean, you probably could get a pretty good tan, at least on your face.
And I would beg them to take me to McMurdo Station and whatever, so that I could be like, "Hey, I'm in the same place where the thing took place."
There you go.
Did I come back as a thing?
Probably not.
Parole evidence rule
I found his body!
is the idea that you can't have extraneous evidence of what something means or what a particular document means if the document isn't ambiguous, if it's clear on its face and it's intended to be the...
What's extraneous evidence in this context?
I have no idea. I don't care about any of this legal mumbo-jumbo. It doesn't matter to me. The claim is very clear. Okay. If you start with the Bible and you don't have any other scientific evidence, you will not come to an accurate scientific understanding of the world. Whatever he has to say about the parole evidence violation officer rule, I don't give a crap about any of that.
Final word on the matter. So what he's basically saying is, look, you can't do this. You can't have this kind of evidence about the Bible might have been figured in these areas, or it might not have meant this exactly, because the Bible is pretty clear. And so I object on the rule. Evidence rule, essentially, you can't add extraneous
Thank
evidence.
you.
Is that the case? Should that objection be sustained? So joining me on the program today is Dr. Hugh Ross. He is the founder of Reasons to Believe. It's a ministry that basically is made up of scientists, philosophers who talk about the interaction of science and faith. And if you look at two different, essentially,
Wait,
expressions
what,
of God's word, the Bible, and
how
the
did he?
Bible,
What did he
and
call
Jesus,
him?
they try to hold
How did he?
together.
How did he introduce you, Ross?
Oh, he introduced him as basically the founder of the Reasons to Believe ministry, which is a ministry focused on how to connect the Bible and science and faith.
I thought I heard him say he's a philosopher and a scientist. Did he say that?
He might have. You know what? We're all philosophers.
Even better. Even better than talking to a biblical scholar about the Bible, as I've discovered, is to talk to a philosopher, because obviously philosophers know what they're doing when it comes to this ancient Iron Age text written in a language that none of them actually read, right?
Yeah. There's got to be some philosophers out there who know some Hebrew.
I'm sure there are some. The ones I've encountered do not.
The philosophers,
but you're
they
not...
tend to be inspiring.
I'll bet if you went to the Jewish parts of New York, or if you were in like Tel Aviv, you could find some Hebrew reading philosophers.
Oh yeah, I to be fair, honestly, yes, there's plenty.
Spinoza.
Jewish philosophy is a long-standing tradition.
But you know what? I bet that on the Venn diagram, the intersection of Hebrew-speaking reading philosophers with philosophers who are raising questions about historical and methodological naturalism, it just doesn't even get there. I'm guessing it doesn't even get there.
Roshina Jerkin Jello Keller for $4.99 says, "I use the Bible's cure for leprosy." Good luck with that.
Right,
good luck with that.
Yeah. Especially since it's...
I use the Bible's test for adultery.
Wow. When was the last time you thought your wife was being adulterous?
You know what? That's none of your business.
Okay. All right. Well, I'm sorry that you have had that experience with
That's
your wife.
between me and the spouse and the priest for some reason.
Well, he's got to be the one. Who else is going to write out the words from the Torah so he can scrape it into a magical potion?
It's not. It's
you don't
not
know how to
Torah.
do that.
Dirt in it.
It's not. It's not the Torah. It's magic. It's magic words that only the priest knows.
Oh.
Yeah.
Well, see, if he's the only one who knows them, then he's the only one who can put them on the parchment so he can scrape them off later.
It's true.
Yeah.
That's true. And that's the point.
Hey, listen, I survived the last time I had dirt water as a drink, so I think I'll be okay. Just saying.
You don't think your thigh is going to fall?
Nah, it's good so far.
Okay.
These two things will not contradict each other.
Maybe it's just a really delayed effect. Years.
Oh, my pleasure. Well, Abdu, I'm an astrophysicist, just like Neil deGrasse Tyson. And
just like him, huh?
Okay, there is a lot of overlap between the work that Neil deGrasse Tyson did when he was still a working scientist instead of a science communicator, and the work that Hugh Ross publishes, which, by the way, Hugh Ross does publish in regular old journals about cosmology and astrophysics, so that is what he does. I just don't know the degree to which that matters for this question. Because remember, the question is, can you get modern science starting with nothing but the Bible and not gaining any actual, empirical evidence?
Is Hugh Ross maybe also better described as a science communicator in this context?
So at this point, yeah, probably. I don't think he's still doing a lot of active research, but for most of his time at Reasons to Believe, he was still doing active research, as far as I know. So maybe here in 2024, science communicator or just apologist might be a better label for him. He definitely spent longer as a scientist than Neil deGrasse Tyson did. And I do think he was an actual scientist, which is one of those, if someone were to say, you don't think creationists can be real scientists, I would point to Hugh Ross as a real scientist who was also a creationist, who actually did real cosmology work.
Dapper.
So, yes?
Vulpix is asking, what's the pre-Yiddish for fetus deletus?
We'll have to ask Ramat. He's the one who knows all about pre-Yiddish. Because remember, some of the Bible was written in pre-Yiddish.
There we go.
That's
pre-Yiddish, that's right.
Hugh Ross is a science miscommunicator. Thank you.
At this point, yeah, he does do a fair bit of that. I've definitely seen. So here's the thing, right? I don't know enough about cosmology to really dig into his stuff and how he connects it to theology. However, I do know that he has successfully published for years in real journals about just the empirical evidence that he has about cosmology and his hypotheses about, things like cosmogony and, formation of large scale structures in the universe and all that kind of stuff. But he does seem to then imply in ways that I don't think most scientists would agree with that therefore God is real. And this is like, I feel like you missed a few steps in your logical chain there from like galaxy formation to therefore obviously God, and specifically the Christian God is definitely real because look at space.
It's just like the underpants gnomes in South Park.
Yeah.
They're like step 1 is this, step 2 step 3 prophet.
Yeah.
But
Or
they
it's
just
like
put
a
therefore
long-winded
God.
version of look at the trees, except it's look at the stars.
Yeah.
What shocked me about what he said, he's a scientist.
Mhm.
Surely he would apply the scientific method to the text. I mean, I was taught the scientific method in
What does that mean?
What? Does Hugh Ross apply the scientific method to everything he reads? Like how
He might
how
say
s-
yes. He might say yes.
Wow.
I don't even know what it would mean to apply the scientific method to the text of a book. Like any book, I don't care what
Right.
it is, right?
Right?
Like even if it's even if it's a cosmology
House of
textbook,
Leaves
yeah, like what's
sitting behind me. Do you think he could apply that?
yeah, like
'Cause
whether
good
it be
luck.
fiction, history, even a science textbook, I don't know what it would mean to apply the scientific method to a text. To apply the scientific method to things like observations and hypotheses and data sets, which
But apparently
plain text isn't
this
any of
is-
those.
This is something that all scientists do or are supposed to do. Right?
Yeah.
In their super secret science clubs. Wherever Hugh Ross learned this important literary tactic of applying the scientific method
the
to
cloistered
all
assembly of science.
literature.
Ooh.
every grade,
So-
from grade 1 through grade 12. Didn't pick up the Bible until I was 17.
Hold on a second. I just had an epiphany. Suddenly this makes sense to me. Suddenly I now understand why so many professional scientists absolutely suck at doing humanities work.
Because they're applying the scientific method to
Yes!
random ass texts.
This makes sense
Okay.
now.
Maybe that's it.
Last year,
Fun.
of,
Sorry, I
school
was just going to
education.
say fun fact, everyone. In case you were in doubt, being a scientist does not qualify you to read literature.
I feel like being literate qualifies you to read literature, though.
What?
It does.
Okay.
But there are a variety of levels of expertise when it comes to actually,
Engaging
reading
with literature and
and engaging with literature. And science guy isn't one of them.
yeah, it's a skill set that is not necessarily taught by the same classes that will teach you how to successfully interpret, say, a stellar spectrogram. So that is also a really cool skill set, and I've taken some classes to learn how to do that. I don't remember how to do it anymore, but I've done it. Very cool. It was a very different than, say, my English literature classes that I also took. Very, very different.
I just
But I
remembered
applied
that my college astronomy course taught me how to measure the albedo of the moon's reflective surface, and we had a whole class lab where we went outside and gazed at the moon, and now I forgot how to do all that, and that makes me sad.
That's all right. My class taught us how to measure the moon's libido.
The scientific method to the text. And what I realized is Neil deGrasse Tyson didn't do that. Step 1 of the scientific
How
Oh.
dare he? Mark Agamotto
This-
1313 Smith for $2 says, apply scientific method to one fish, two fish. Yeah. What can this tell us about the nature of reality?
Exactly.
All right.
establish the frame of reference for the point of view. And if you look in Genesis 1:2, it tells us that the Spirit of God is hovering over the surface of the waters of planet Earth.
Bullshit. No, it does not. It
Brooding.
says that and
We'll
it's
take a
not,
drink for him being
is
silly.
Is this the spirit of God? What is that? What is that, Hugh Ross? In the Hebrew, in the text, it's the same word that's used for wind, right?
Mm-hmm.
It's
yeah.
very, very very sensibly just the wind of God. And, take that for what it's worth. Take it as you will. There's a lot of, what's the word I'm looking for? There's a lot of interchange within a Hebrew concept, within a Hebrew worldview, between the idea of a spirit and your breath or your wind or your life. And as Vishanti correctly pointed out here too, that word hover is problematic.
Not like this. It's not like that.
And it is so. And this is a term. I think this is my personal. This is my opinion, guys. But if you do like a deep dive, a lexical, etymological investigation of this word, its root, its cognates in other comparative languages, related Semitic languages, it's not an easy word, and some of its usage and its meaning is derived out of these situations and these texts of conquest and combat, which is really interesting insofar as this particular text is concerned, because I think there's a case to be made that this might be a vestigial feature or a fossil of a text of a time when this was actually a combat myth.
Ooh, that makes sense to me because of like the Sumerian legends about conquering, the sea serpent and defeating the deities of chaos waters. Yeah.
All right, we got a couple things.
Like
Good Dude 3, who's been a member for 28 months, is at the tetrapod level, says, I learned to measure the moon's libido. And then Sokka? Yeah, remember that time Sokka's girlfriend turned into the moon? That sucks. That's rough.
Fibonacci is God irreducibly complex, says, measuring the moon's libido using L'Hospital's Rule 34.
And then Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $2 says, 1 shirt, 2 shirt, red shirt, he's dead, Jim.
Amazing.
Yeah, he is.
Although actually, someone actually did the numbers on like how many red shirts versus gold or blue there were on the Enterprise, and like what your actual survival rate was. And it turns out that the worst survival rate is actually the blue shirts, given how many fewer there were and how many of them actually did die on screen. And so while way more red shirts died, a much higher percentage of the blue shirts on the Enterprise died. So
Aramgard writes, Genesis has the wind of God descend on the waters of the deep. The Enuma Elish has Marduk split Tiamat with a blast of wind. So
yep.
All right, here we go.
Neil deGrasse Tyson was interpreting Genesis 1 as if God was above the earth, looking down on the earth. The text clearly states that he's on the surface of the waters.
Wait, what?
Objection.
I don't remember Tyson saying that.
What does that have to do with anything?
I don't know. The Siluf for 26 says, in Swedish, spirit equals anda and breath equals andas. Yeah, in fact, spirit and breath are etymologically related in most languages. English is weird because it took spirit from Latin, and as a result of that, it has a big split in the etymology for these words. And but yeah, most languages didn't do that because English really likes to heavily relexify itself every once in a while. It's happened more than once.
It's
the
Greek
thing of languages.
It's the same in Greek as well.
Yeah,
most breath.
It's very common.
It's very, very common. Yeah.
Yeah.
In fact, the way that spirit ended up getting into English was like it started being Latin started using it to not just mean literal breath, but also to mean something like the essence of something, which is how the idea of spirit was connected to alcohol, because you could use alcohol to bring out the essence of various flavors by dissolving them into alcohol. And so then that entered into English is like, well, that's the spirit, the essence of it. And then, well, that's connected already in our Bibles to like, spiritual things, and that all has an interplay in English. And in most languages, they just didn't bother with that. They just kept...
Cognitive trifurcation writes, continuing to not beat the linguist accusations.
Look, I'm giving up on beating them. I'm just going to continue to say I'm still not a linguist. Just like I'm not a biblical scholar or a paleontologist. I'm just a dinosaur. With a history degree.
Looking up at the atmosphere. And notice that the text also gives us the initial conditions. That's step 2 of the scientific method. Don't interpret until you establish both the frame of reference and the starting conditions or the initial conditions.
So
And
wait a minute. Is Hugh Ross coming out here and admitting that creation was not ex nihilo, that in the Genesis 1 creation story?
So he is starting in
There's,
Genesis 1:2, so he might be assuming that Genesis 1:1 is in fact God creating the heavens and the earth, even though that's not really a plausible reading of the Hebrew.
Right. Yes.
So
Okay.
I don't
Yeah.
think so what he's saying right now is compatible with a non-ex nihilo creation, which is what's depicted in Genesis 1. But I'm not sure that he's going to actually come across and say that that is the case. Mark Akaboto 1313 Smith for $5 says English is 3 languages in a trench coat, mugging other languages for spare vocabulary with a Mothra. So we'll take a drink
it.
for that Mothra.
I like it. Yeah, that's good.
True.
It is true in a loose sense. I'll give it that. It is loosely true. In a very literal sense, no, it's not actually true. But yeah, it's definitely gives you the spirit of how English
shut up,
works.
Neil deGrasse Tyson.
Exactly.
Genesis 1:2 is very explicit about this, that there's water over the whole
Okay,
surface.
listen, I need to object here. I have to. Your Honor, if it please the court. Anybody who is not a biblical scholar who gets up there and says the Bible is clear on anything, or the Bible clearly states, does not know the language, has not studied the language, and cannot tell you any of the intricacies about just how wiggly, wobbly, like, nebulous the language is a lot of the time, especially in poetic passages like Genesis.
Also, I gotta say, Sealoof has gotten it right. Dapper Dinosaur is linguistically autodidactic. Correct.
Correct.
Correct, yeah.
Fun fact. I met Hugh Ross once.
Oh.
It was a long time ago. It was probably close to 20 years ago now. Oh, maybe it was 20 years ago. And I don't know, maybe he's gotten a lot better since then. But fun fact, Hugh Ross's Hebrew sucks.
You don't say.
It does.
Is it better or worse than mine?
Ooh.
It would be hard for it to be worse.
It might be though, honestly.
Oof, that's rough. That's really rough. My Hebrew is atrocious.
the earth, meaning
But
there
you're
was
a
no
dinosaur.
continents yet,
True.
and it was dark on the surface of the waters, and the earth was empty of life, and it was unfit for life. Now, you brought up that
That's not what tohu wavohu means, but okay, Hugh.
a legal rule about bringing out
All right.
extraneous evidence. Well, the Bible is not just one book; it's 66 books. So I would
Okay, well that solves
Yeah,
the
you nailed
question. I got it.
Protestant canon. Got it.
66 Protestant book. Yeah, 66
All
book
right.
Protestant canon. Okay, I successfully guessed that.
There's
It's not hard to guess.
there's a lot of, I mean, by this if we're picking definitions here, I mean, there's a lot of Bibles out there.
Yeah.
Isn't there?
The thing is,
Yeah.
it's usually not that hard to tell which one they mean, though. Like, if this had been a Catholic
true.
podcast, there would have been a crucifix or, like, a Virgin Mary in a blue cloak or something. If this had been, like, an Eastern Orthodox podcast, there would have been some icons
Icons
on the
somewhere.
wall. If this had been, like, a Coptic Orthodox podcast, it would have been similar icons, but they would have been in the very distinctive Coptic style. If this had been, like, the widest canon with the Ethiopian Tewahedo. Well, first of all, I don't think it would be hosted by a guy who could pass as white, because the number of white people,
probably
the
not.
number of people who could pass as white in that church is
Kid
basically zero.
Low.
can pass
Yeah.
this white.
Yeah.
Like,
There's no
I
rule
mean-
that you can't be white and join the Ethiopian Tewahedo
I'm
Orthodox
just-
Church. You can.
No, I mean, Hugh Ross is more than just passing.
No, I meant the host.
Is white here,
I meant
isn't
the
he?
host.
Oh,
The
the
host. Yeah.
host. Okay.
Yeah,
oh,
I
fair
don't
enough.
actually think that
Yes.
Abdu Mallory
Sure.
would probably self-identify as white, but he certainly could pass.
Certainly.
Yeah.
Yes.
So.
You know, am I the
So.
only one getting Tom Noonan vibes from Hugh Ross?
I don't know who that is.
Yeah, I don't either.
Did you see Manhunter, the Michael Mann version of like the Hannibal Lecter story?
Yeah, we watched it together.
He was.
No.
Yes, we did. You're welcome. You would recognize Tom Noonan if you looked him up, but
Okay.
that's just like one of the first.
Okay.
He's such a sweet person, but he always plays like the most unsettling, uncomfortably creepy dudes.
That happens a lot with people who play villains in movies.
Hugh Ross has a copy of The Message on his bookshelf by
That's disappointing.
Yeah.
is it Eugene Peterson? I
I
think
don't actually know who
is
quote unquote
is the author.
translated.
Who actually taught for many years at the Regent College, which is located on the campus of the University of British Columbia in Vancouver, which is actually where Hugh Ross is also from Vancouver, but I don't think that's the connection there.
I did not know he was from Vancouver.
Yeah, he went to UBC.
So he's Canada's fault, is what you're telling me. Canada, you guys got to stop dumping your trash people onto the Americas.
Honestly, guys, there's a couple of blemishes on our resume
Jordan
here.
Peterson.
Yeah, David Falk, also a UBC grad. Sadly,
see, Canada just kicks out all their crappy people and sends them to the U.S., just like Australia does with like Ken Ham.
Falk's still here, man. But
all right, well, that's good.
Yeah,
keep them.
So
don't let them south of the border. I don't want them.
My campaign is ongoing.
Send them farther north. Get them into far northern Canada, like where no one lives. Send them up there.
He could be Edmonton's problem.
There you go. Where no one lives because it's too far north.
Yep.
Challenged Neil deGrasse Tyson in saying we have to only look at Genesis 1 in isolation with what the rest of the Bible says. You actually get a much longer...
So that's not what Tyson did. He literally connected Genesis 1 to Revelation.
To the book of Revelation.
He went from one end to the other. I'm actually beginning to wonder was Ross actually shown the same clip that we were? Because it could be that Abdu is actually tricking him, and he showed Ross a different clip than the one that we watched. That's a possibility, at least, right? Because that would explain why Ross is saying things about what Neil deGrasse Tyson just said. That is not at all accurate.
No.
It does not comport with reality.
Also, as a biblical scholar, as the only between all of us on screen here, and including Abdu Murray, I'm probably the best qualified to be making statements about the Bible.
Mm-hmm.
As a biblical scholar, absolutely, you should be looking at Genesis 1 in isolation to other parts of the Bible. That's the responsible thing to do. That's kind of what we do, because unlike Mr. Astrophysicist here, biblical scholars actually recognize that the Bible was composed of many fragments of texts, parts of literature that were compiled and redacted over long periods of time. So one of the goals of every biblical scholar is to effectively investigate the compositional reception history of any given text. And the responsible thing to do here is to treat Genesis 1 as one should, as a fragment, because it's pretty obviously
and in addition to that, as someone who's a non-matriculated rabbinical student, they taught us about the documentary hypothesis and the different textual authors and the reception of that in our history class this spring. So this is something that even level 1 rabbinic students learn.
I was taught that in my Catholic high school as well.
Yeah.
The Catholics are well aware of this. All right, so we got a super chat. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $2 says, "I hope Hugh Ross isn't related to Bob Ross." I don't think they're closely related, but they're probably.
I think that's impossible. I mean, just look at that hairline, guys.
Well, okay,
it's just not. No, there's no way.
Maybe one of them was adopted into the Ross clan, and is not genetically related. Or maybe Ross is just a common surname. I don't know. Here's what we're going to do, though. We're going to take a quick break. I'm going to grab myself a little nip bottle of vodka, and I'm back.
I think I'm going to alcoholate.
All right. Well, we will be back in just a few minutes. In the meantime, there's going to be a coming soon for the next episode of Star Trek Lexington over on my other channel, Top Hats Off. Go check that out. It's a lot of fun. We have fun with it. Next time on Star Trek Lexington.
Captain's Log, Stardate 6057.9. In what is becoming a bit of a theme, Admiral Stoker has ordered us to yet another system with a mysterious alien megastructure. This one is near the Omega Draconis system. The structure is orbiting a planet called Chektir, which itself orbits a black hole. Starfleet has lost contact with the survey team, and we are in charge of finding out what happened to them and rescuing them, if possible. Long-range scans indicate unusual instability in the black hole, and Starfleet suspects this may be related to the loss of contact with the survey team led by Lieutenant Commander Tala. We are at Warp 8, and will be in the system in less than an hour.
It's not just the survey team who are in danger. The ancient Abyss Station has reactivated after an unknown period of dormancy, sending gravitational waves throughout local space. Is the station an ancient colony? A research station? Or perhaps something far darker? One thing is for sure, it will not give up its secrets easily, and is actively resisting study. Further, more lives are at stake than the crew even realize, because Chaktir may not be as dead as expected. Join the crew of the USS Lexington as they race against time, contend with the defenses of an ancient space station, and save lives, all with the threat of an unpredictable black hole blasting lethal radiation into space. Hey, welcome back. I have everyone back with me. I hope you enjoyed that coming soon for Star Trek Lexington. We've been having a lot of fun with that. So actually, it's the same game system that we played there, Kip, when we did the one-shot.
Oh, that's fun. That was fun.
Yeah.
So
before, to help myself warm back up to playing Star Trek Adventures, I did a one-shot with a few people, and Kip was one of them. And we played a Klingon game where everyone was a Klingon.
it was my very first role-playing game ever. And it was pretty cool. But I suffered debilitating injuries pretty quickly.
It's true.
So, but it you know.
I was quite nearly mortally wounded when I played an android in our one shot of Mothership 2-3 years ago that never got uploaded. Ahem.
Yeah, well, someone never got me their recordings in an appropriate manner, so I gave explicit instructions to everyone.
Somebody literally, it was
only some people
quite
followed.
Literally the worst dice roll ever.
Yeah.
Somebody was going to throw a grenade at our enemy, and they rolled a 1, they just dropped it, and it exploded.
It killed almost everyone. Almost everyone.
Wow.
Yep.
So, hey, before we go, I have to. So I've poured myself a glass of Crown, for this installment, but I have to ask the audience about this. You'll notice that I bought this at the liquor store a couple weeks ago, but the lid, the top of my Crown Royal bottle is not a crown.
Yeah.
And I'm very concerned.
Maybe it's just a stylized miter.
I'm hoping that's what it is, but I'm worried that that the crown bottles, the crowns are gone.
It might be.
And what if I
Just-
don't ever see one?
Just console yourself with
again?
the idea that that's actually just a stylized mitre, which itself is a form of crown.
Yeah, but it's not right. It's not right.
Look, Kip is an old man who doesn't like change.
But it's not. I mean, it's not even cool. Like, it's
All right. So before we get right back into it, I do real quick want to say we do have a membership chat from Renee Intellectually Gerrymandered Reborn, who's been a member for 12 months and is at the amulet level, and says, I do actually have a few friends who live even further north than Edmonton, I think. Are they polar bears?
Yeah, really.
Uh,
Are they vampires? Because
we get that 30 days a night going. Although that actually took place in the United
God, one of
States,
the
because that was
best-
in Nome.
true, but also that's just longitudinally
Yeah.
real way up there. So
As far as I know, it's the northernmost permanently inhabited settlement in North America. And I've said it before, but I had an uncle who spent a season up there, and yeah, he wasn't allowed to go outside alone or without a gun because of polar bears. Because the polar bears will hide and hunt people. So, all right, before we get back into it, I just want to say thank you guys so much for all your generosity and support for the channel. I really appreciate it. If you want to help out, there's a Patreon, there's a channel membership. You get early access, you get access to my Discord server. If that's not your thing, there's an Amazon wish list, there's a merch store. You guys know what to do. I don't want to belabor it. Let's get more Hugh Ross in here, because I build this as Tyson versus Ross, and we didn't actually get all that much Ross in, so...
Longer scientific treatment of the events of creation in Job 37, 38, and 39. And he's probably not aware that book predates the book of Genesis.
Oh my god.
So
let's take a drink. Let's take a drink and we'll talk about it.
Now, okay, hold on. A couple of things need to be said here.
Nice snifter.
Making me want to drink.
It's possible, I think, that he might be right in that the book of Job predates the book of Genesis, but he's not right in the way that he thinks he is. So the book of Job is probably Persian, maybe broaching Hellenistic, and I mean, so that means 400 BCE, 300 BCE. It might actually be a little older than that. Parts of it. The Book of Job is notoriously difficult to date, but as far as I'm aware, most scholars set it close to the Persian period. Now, the Book of Genesis is another matter entirely, because remember how I said that it's composed of fragments, that there's all sorts of individual pieces and traditions of literature that actually stretch back pretty early. There's parts of the book of Genesis, for instance, Genesis chapter 49 is probably really, really, really old, like 800, maybe even that old, 800 BCE. However, when we're talking about the book of Genesis, this starts to get more complicated, and I'm of the opinion, and again, this is just my opinion, but I'm of the opinion that the book of Genesis, as we have it and as it existed in its earliest sort of quasi-complete form, is probably also very late. I would be willing to suggest that it might be as late as like the 300s, kind of late.
Wow.
So, and I have a variety of reasons for that. One of them is because the Table of Nations, not the Table of Nations, sorry, it's the genealogy in Genesis chapter 5, which preserves the so-called long ages of the patriarchs, is constructed on a mathematical formula that aligns itself with Berosus's version of the Sumerian Kings list, and Berosus was writing in, I believe the early 3rd century BCE.
That's
So
late.
We got a couple super chats. Dutch Tunicate Demonic Selection for $2 says, I'm trying to get my master's in Svalbard. I believe that means that Dutch Tunicate is in Svalbard trying to get their masters, and not that they're trying to get their masters in the subject of Svalbard. So good luck. Either way. I mean, hey, if you're trying to get a master's in the subject Svalbard, good luck for that too.
Sounds interesting.
Ambiguity in English. Fun stuff. One of the reasons why it's hard to say that any text is actually just completely unambiguous and clear. Mark Agamotto 1313 Smith for $5 says, Kip is an old man, says the ceratosaur, who is millions, not billions, of years old. Pot and kettle Dapper. Hey, just because I'm old doesn't make Kip not old.
Oh, that's fair.
Yeah. It turns out, if the pot calls the kettle black, that could still be true. It could still be true. All right, we're going to hit play.
And so there's things left out in the Genesis 1 creation text because they're well covered in the book of Job. And Job predates
Objection,
There's
univocality.
things like, sorry, what did he say?
I'm sorry.
There's things like what
So
in the Genesis?
What I just heard was there are things that are basically glossed over in Genesis because apparently the author of Genesis was like, well, Job already covered it, as if the person writing any of these texts or the people writing any of these texts were looking at Job, knowing that in the future Job would be included in some canonical list of scriptures, and then saying, well, that guy's got it. Like, what is...
Again.
How does he think that any
Objection,
canon
Your
has come
Honor,
about?
may it please the court. Univocality.
Yeah, like, does Ross think that whether it be, like, the Jewish canon or any of the Christian canons, that this is a thing that organically came about as the books were being written? Because it absolutely isn't. The idea of canonicity didn't occur to any religious group in this tradition until long after all the books had been written.
Like, even if let's
I'm gonna take a drink. That
say
was stupid.
something crazy here. Okay, let's say something crazy here, and say that the author of Genesis chapter 1 knew the book of Job. Hell, he had it on his table or writing block while he was authoring Genesis chapter 1. At what point and on the basis of what literary clues are we suggesting that he's drawing anything from
that
the
it
book
would
of
be
Job?
convenient for Hugh Ross? That's it. That it would be convenient for Hugh Ross.
All right,
So
it might just be me, but that doesn't sound especially convincing.
So I'm actually... Here's the thing, right?
Yeah.
I know Hugh Ross is smarter than this, because I've seen him be smarter than this. And so I'm actually starting to be curious as to whether or not the clip that we were shown of Neil deGrasse Tyson is actually the same thing that Hugh watched. I'm starting to suspect it might not have been. Or maybe Hugh Ross watched more of that same interview, and then maybe Tyson said things that we haven't heard that would lead him to make some of the responses he's made. But that's not super on topic. But yeah, the idea that Genesis omits aspects of creation because they're covered in Job, look, that's a fine idea to investigate, but to just claim that as if that's just an obvious fact of the text, you would need to do a lot of work to actually demonstrate that that is a plausible take.
At least the Deuteronomistic historian actually told his audience these things were further written about in the so-called Book of Yasher or in the Chronicles of the Kings.
Yeah, there's nothing in Genesis 1 that says, go check Job.
Nothing like that.
Yeah.
Nothing like that at all.
2-3 for $5 says, it wasn't in Genesis because it was in Job. The Gospels would like to have a word. Yeah, there is that too. Is like, there's a lot of coverage. There's one thing you can say about the Gospel authors. They were definitely good at drawing allusions from earlier scriptures.
Genesis. So yes, I think there's a valid legal case. We have to bring in the content of Job 37, 38, and 39.
But you have
we
to
don't.
like.
You shouldn't actually.
Look, listen. I'm not a lawyer, and I've never been to court. I've watched a lot of legal drama on TV, so I think that qualifies me for something.
As a Boston legal aficionado, I can clearly just speak on.
Listen, I could be wrong, but don't you have to sort of establish the relevance
Yeah.
of these things
So
before
generally,
you introduce them into?
in testimony, at least, you do rely on the opposite side to question the relevance. But in terms of introducing like document evidence or taped evidence or things like that, you do usually have to establish the relevance beforehand before they can be admitted. Assuming that you had them before the trial starts. If you don't have them until after the trial starts and you want to introduce them as new evidence, then you have to then say what the relevance is while you're trying to introduce it. But yeah, generally, relevance does have to be established at some point, or at least it can be very easily questioned by the other side.
And the judge can just look at you and go, nah.
But also, I want to point out, no matter how much of Job we bring in to Genesis, no matter how much we do, it does not get over the very, very basic historical fact that at no point has anyone ever learned more about science simply by looking at the Bible, saying, well, I guess this thing must be true in the world, then going out and gathering empirical evidence and finding that it's true.
What Neil said in the clip that we were shown.
Right.
So, and I mean, just like let's be clear here. In Job, chapter 37 and 38. By the way, I think we spent like a whole show talking about those, or a couple of shows talking about those a long time ago, didn't we? But in those chapters of the book of Job, the very, very scientifically literate book of Job, they talk about things like the storehouses of heaven where all the snow is kept, right? Yeah, where all the snow is.
God's got a big snow machine and he fills up the snow buckets and then dumps them on Earth.
Is this helping? Is this helping us, Hugh Ross?
Yeah.
Is it? Is it really?
Right.
Because that's the other thing. Yeah, if you want to talk about the scientific conclusions you would make out of Job, if all you had was the Bible and you went to Job to get your scientific conclusions, sorry, but your meteorology is going to be way off. And maybe we should have had Maddie on. We could have asked Maddie, hey, Maddie, do you do meteorology with the assumption that God has a warehouse full of snow that he's going to dump someplace at some point?
I feel like wherever Maddie lives, somewhere she just took psychic damage and doesn't know why.
Maddie's probably like sewing another blanket, and then suddenly she's got like a psychic nosebleed. Sorry, Maddie.
Yep. Maddie's just sewing and like, ah! Someone's being dumb!
I'll have to apologize to Maddie.
And what's interesting about Job 38, verses 8 and 9, is that it gives us some clarification on the initial conditions, where it says that God had blanketed the seas that covered the whole face of the earth with clouds, and it was the clouds that kept the seas dark. Because I noticed Neil deGrasse Tyson...
So it was fog?
That's what I'm hearing.
Okay. But why? Like, therefore what?
Wait, let's have him here. Let's let him tell us, therefore what.
Thinks that Genesis text is saying there was no sun until the fourth day. And actually, what it's basically saying is creatures on the surface of the earth were not able to see the sun in the sky until the fourth day.
Let's
so wait, when he
Genesis
creates the sun, Hugh Ross is saying, "Oh no, it was there. They just couldn't see it." No.
It was there the whole time.
It was there the whole time. They just couldn't see it.
Sorry, I have to open my text here just because I have to look here. Look, it even opened up to Genesis 1:1. So, where is the sun is created on what? Like day? It's like 4, day 4.
4.
So that is God called it.
That's 1:14.
1:14. And God said, "Let there be lights in the rakia." In the rakia Hashemayim. So that's
Hashemayim,
that's the firmament,
the dome
of
over the flat
sky, to divide
literally
the day
and it's
the
literally
night.
Separate. Yeah.
Yes.
Like cleave. Yeah.
To separate, to cleave. So is the suggestion that up until this time the sun is just kind of hanging out there, and then
because I need them to explain there was light but no light sources, but we what are you even doing there? That is not
what Ross is going for, because I've heard Ross go through this kind of idea before. Ross is saying that basically Genesis 1 is describing the Earth as basically just being really foggy and cloudy, and then by day 4, the fog and clouds had cleared up enough that you could see the sun. Which
This
is
is-
not at all
I
what
love
the
how
text
the
says.
text doesn't say that at
This
all.
is
That's
pretty
great. You just
hard.
make
This
up
is
my own
pretty hard to
headcanon.
hold when you read in verse 16. And God made
Right.
two
Yep.
lights.
Yeah. So
The
here's the thing.
great light
To dominate the day.
to dominate the day,
Yeah.
Right.
and the small light to dominate
So
the night
what
The night.
and the stars.
And the stars.
what Ross is doing is actually demonstrating the accuracy
Kochevin.
of Tyson's statement. Because remember, Tyson said
Yes.
what people do is they bring in their scientific knowledge of the world and then they use that to reinterpret the text, which again, I don't care if that's what you want to do unless you're trying to tell me that was the actual intent of the authors and the understanding of the original listeners or readers. It wasn't any of those things. But if that's how you want to personally interpret a book, I don't get to tell you how to personally interpret books. So outside of your personal interpretation, if you want to say this is something scholar should take seriously as the actual intent of the authors, no. But what Neil deGrasse Tyson is saying is people use their knowledge of science to reinterpret the text. And if all you had was the text, you could not do the reverse. You could not engineer modern science out of just the text. And Ross is showing us exactly what Tyson said people do. Because Ross knows that the sun long predates the plants that already were growing on day 3 or 2 or whatever. I don't care.
Yeah.
And so he has come to the text and he has given it an interpretation that you absolutely would never get from just the text.
Yeah, you wouldn't get the fog over that.
So I'm going to take a drink
Tip,
for
can you
Very
unpack
astute.
Lemem Shellot there, like the root of that and what's going on? Because I don't necessarily trust the
Lemem
translation.
Shellot.
Lemem Shellot in verse 16.
16.
Yeah.
the thing where Chenko says, we haven't been considering Hoven's ice sphere that was protecting the Earth from the sun's harmful rays before the fall.
Oh, Lemem Shellot. Yeah. So this is like
Mashal?
it's memshala. Yeah. So this is the
Memshala,
construct
okay.
form, right? So
Okay.
that's a feminine construct, which is indicated by the Tav ending,
Mhm.
right?
Yeah.
So and in
'Cause
this,
or wrote.
yes, exactly. So yeah, the ruler of the night is the ruling of the night, right? So the dominion of the night is
Dominion?
it's
I just need to.
construct there.
I'm gonna have to hit the highlight later on this because it's a root that I'm not super familiar with. So.
It's from
I was
it's from the verbal root is mashal, right?
Mhm.
Which is common for like to rule. And yeah,
Okay.
so nerdy Hebrew
Okay.
stuff, guys.
Yay!
job. Good job.
I know
by
what
the
happened
way,
on
Fitz.
Creation
I also
Day
love,
1.
on your
Thank you. I also love how the text is like, the lesser light is ruling the night and the stars. So
Yeah, the
is
stars
it
are there
ruling
too.
the night and the stars, or is it just like God made the 2 great lights and then also the stars? By the way,
Yeah.
just like tacked on the end there, like.
just tacked on.
And in verse 17 also debunks Hugh Ross's thing because as a continuation of verse 16 where God makes 2 great lights and the stars, it says that God gave them to the Rakia or in the Rakia
Yeah.
to shine upon the earth.
Yeah.
So
exactly.
he can't have something blocking it before you
So
Hugh
and
Ross,
this
what are you
is
doing, man?
very important. Like that.
He's
that
doing
verb,
what Neil deGrasse Tyson said he was going to do. He's taking his knowledge from science
Yes.
and he's using it to reinterpret the Bible in a way that you would never interpret the Bible without
Yeah, because
that
literally
background
it's
science.
exactly backwards of what Hugh Ross is trying to say.
Exactly. If you're going to, because what Neil deGrasse Tyson is doing is taking what's a quote unquote plain reading of the text, which I think we should do. But what I mean by that is that we should try and first read this text as the author likely intended it to be read, right? That's our first step. And in so doing, the plain reading of this text would never carry you to this pretty nuanced scientific understanding of what's going on. It just never would.
Yeah, which is the whole point that Tyson is making.
Yes, exactly.
So yeah, it's I say this as like Ross versus Tyson. Instead, it's actually mostly just Ross showing that Tyson is right about this.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
While doing it
Precisely.
in an adversarial manner.
Atmosphere, the
Yep.
clouds went from opaque to translucent, where light could now
Wrong.
pass through, photosynthesis could begin.
Wrong.
I'm sorry.
But not
I'm sorry. Show me that.
Yeah, where is that in the text?
In the text, show me that.
Yeah. Because
Mhm.
here's the if you want to read a whole bunch of extra stuff in there and make some stuff up and say,
Oh,
well, this isn't directly contradicted by the text, if as long as you're willing to, let the text be very, very loose in terms of what it's saying. Okay, yeah, but that's still
Right.
not the conclusion you're going to get from
Yep.
just the text. That is not a interpretation that is ever going to suggest it to itself to anyone based on just the text.
yeah,
the-
exactly.
And in
Yeah.
fact, actually,
I mean, the pixies, the billion pixies, are the ones who took the sun and moved it right
Oh.
into place.
it was nice of them.
It was good of
Yeah.
them, but you don't see that.
It's not in the text,
though,
but you can infer it.
in the text, but you infer it because we all know the pixies are real,
Right.
and
Yeah.
and there's a lot of them, and they do shit like that, right?
Yeah, they move stars around.
Yeah.
Not until the fourth day did the atmosphere become transparent, so that animals on the
Lie.
surface of the Earth for the
Good
first time
God.
could actually see
Nope.
the sun, moon, and stars.
So I
But
would,
it doesn't. Like,
I'm in addition to the
Wait,
fact that he's just
Hang on, where
further.
were the animals made? He's even getting the order of the
He got
animals
that
wrong.
Yeah,
Like,
the
'cause
animals
Yeah.
are 5 and
the
6.
animals are on day 5. What is happening?
like no? Is he doing the same thing here
God.
that he's doing with his understanding of the formation of the sun and the moon, where yeah, but it didn't really happen on day 6.
All the animals were too
Uh,
small to see, and only on day 5 did they become big enough to see. And so now God is talking about them. Maybe
They
he
is
became
just-
actually.
Maybe
God,
that
what
is what he's
going on
saying.
here?
I wonder if this is part of now. I'll give you a little bit of background here. The one time I met Hugh Ross, it was because he was giving a lecture
I
in
remember this
a
story.
class So he's giving a lecture in a class at Trinity Western, where I was working while I was still finishing up my PhD, and I was asked basically just to come in and babysit the students, because the instructor was away while Hugh Ross was in town. And he was doing this. He had just finished writing this book about the Book of Job, in which he made this argument about the nephesh, the life that God breathed into man, being representative of what he called soulish creatures, which is partway correct in terms of how the Hebrew writers likely understood this difference between life and non-life, right? But maybe this is working into that. Maybe day 6 is the day. That's the day when animals became, or certain animals became soulish creatures. I don't know, but maybe that's how this fits in Hugh
maybe.
Ross's economy.
Maybe I can get Hugh Ross on the show and we can ask him.
Yeah, man.
I don't think he'd agree to come on the show, but maybe.
No. Is it because you're a dinosaur?
No, I feel like it's more that just like he probably feels like he's too busy. And 2, I don't think he knows who I am enough. I know that his employee Fuzz Rana knows who I am, but that's only because we've interacted on Twitter a few times, and then we just recently chatted on a different show. But other than that, I don't think Hugh Ross knows that I'm a person who he could talk to. So for him, it would just be some random guy from the internet being like, "Hey, Dr. Ross, you want to chat with me? I'm going to tell you that you're wrong about the Bible."
In the sky. And so now we have a fit with the scientific record. If you get the wrong
Yeah, if you reinterpret the Bible to fit with the scientific record, you have a fit with the scientific record. I guess that's true. Technically,
If you
I'll
just
take a drink for it.
completely
But, like-
rearrange what order things happened in the text.
Yeah.
Yeah, sure.
if you just ignore what's there in the text, sure, Hugh.
Man,
Yep.
I've got a little bit of whiskey downstairs, and I'm very tempted to add it to my coffee.
I'm not going to stop you.
Frame of reference and the wrong initial conditions, then yes, it's total scientific nonsense. On that point, I would agree with Neil deGrasse Tyson. It's total scientific nonsense if you get the frame of reference wrong.
You mean the frame of reference of the author of the text?
You mean
Right.
just reading
Yes.
the text?
Yeah.
Oh my
Right.
god.
Okay. Okay.
And if you get the
Wow.
initial conditions wrong. But the text is explicit on giving us both the frame of reference
Sorry?
and the initial
The-
conditions.
And the
The
order!
text is
Oh my
explicit?
god!
The text is explicit.
If the text
What
were
the
explicit,
fuck?
Explicitly the opposite of what he's saying.
Does Hugh Ross now? And you can't look. There's
Wow.
no way. There's no way to give Hugh Ross the benefit of the doubt here that Abdu Murray has showed him a different clip of Neil
Yeah, it doesn't
deGrasse
matter.
Tyson. It does not. And I have to at this point wonder if Hugh Ross understands what the word explicit means, because the text is not.
No.
It just is not.
And if it were, I don't think
Wow.
that Neil deGrasse Tyson would be talking about the text the way he is, because he could just read it. The thing is, I don't think Tyson has a particular paucity of ability to comprehend what he's reading. He's certainly not a biblical scholar who has a nuanced understanding of biblical texts, but I think he's still at least got regular literate human levels of reading comprehension. And if the text were
Also-
explicit about this, he probably wouldn't come to that conclusion.
I concur with Vadim in the chat who says, well, Song of Songs is pretty explicit. I would venture to say it's the only explicit book in the Bible.
Christine V for $10 says, I'm behind, so I don't know if this is proven out, but I find both of these men insufferable for different reasons. This should be fun with a popcorn emoji. And that is Christine V's third super chat on the channel, so thank you very much for that. So yeah, I agree with you. I do find both of them to be to varying degrees insufferable for different reasons. Very different reasons. So actually I find Hugh Ross to be a little less insufferable because I'm used to the kind of thing that he's doing. Because I watch a lot of the creationist nonsense. So to me, my level of tolerance for creationist nonsense is a lot higher than most people. A lot higher.
Noonan's skin stretched over a skeleton.
But even then, so here's one of the things people often say, Dapper, how do you get through all of these things without exploding or or just going and screaming or something? It's like,
Alcohol.
you know, well, when I'm live, yeah, that helps. But when I'm scripting, I do. That just doesn't go into the script. I walk away from my computer, I go rant or I go yell or something like that, and then I calm down and I come back and I continue my script. And the script, oh goodness, I just knocked my bottle over. The script doesn't
your
contain. No, with my stupid clumsy arm that isn't very flexible.
Claws. How do you
Yeah.
knock stuff
What?
over when your arms are so short?
They're yeah.
They're not. I don't have T-Rex arms. They're longer than that. You can see my arm. They're short, but they're not that short.
That's what she said.
Hey, no complaints so far.
And from that perspective, Genesis 1 is now a perfect fit, both chronologically and the description
Just
of the
drink.
events.
We've already covered
Oh,
that.
yeah.
Drink.
Opposite of all of that.
You can read it historically and literally if you
It's a-
follow what I
it's a-
prefer to
No,
call the
no.
biblical
Oh my
testing
God,
method.
this is such a fun
God,
horseshit.
it's
Wow.
so bad. Oh, it's a perfect He said it's a perfect fit
Mm-hmm.
chronologically. A perfect fit.
No, it's not. Also, hey, Kip,
Yeah, this
would you care to
is-
guess in the paleontological record whether animals or plants show up first?
That I'm guessing,
Hmm.
as someone who doesn't know a lot about biology, but I'm guessing plants.
That's what a lot of people think.
Animals.
It's actually animals. Yeah, animals are older than plants.
Mm-hmm.
Really?
Mm-hmm.
Oh, that's cool.
Now, that doesn't mean that animals show up before photosynthesizers do. Photosynthetic
Oh.
organisms show up long before animals, but plants
Okay.
do not
What
show
is
up
a
until
plant?
after. So plants are multicellular eukaryotic organisms with they have certain cellular and anatomical details that they have to count as a plant. that we're not going to get into because that's not the focus. But basically, it's a certain group of photosynthetic organisms that are descended from green algae. And so there are certain things that look like plants, if you look at them, like seaweeds, that are actually a kind of brown or green algae that aren't actually plants. So you ever look at the ingredients list for your ice cream and see carrageenan in there?
I as a as a matter of principle, I choose not to look at the ingredients lists on my
On your ice cream?
on my cartons of ice cream. Yeah.
Okay. Well, if you do, you might find listed in there an ingredient called carrageenan, which is actually a seaweed extract that is used to create a silky smooth gel texture in various products. So basically, it makes your ice cream
Sounds
creamier.
delicious. Yummy.
I mean, it's basically a neutral. It's basically a neutrally flavored non-meat product gelatin. Is basically what's going on there. So
And therefore kosher.
yeah, well, there's that.
Sweet.
It also counts as vegetarian, so you can have vegetarian ice cream instead of using like
Right.
horse hooves or something to make your ice cream, which would not be ideal. So anyway, but that comes from that seaweed that just has like, you see the seaweed on the beach and it has a little bubble here and there. And if you squish the bubble, a little bit of gas comes out. That organism isn't a plant. That is a kind of algae that isn't even technically a plant. And so when the Bible says that plants come first and animals come later, it's getting that wrong.
It
Animals
got
go
all
first.
these things backwards.
Mhm.
Yeah.
It's almost like Dapper Dinosaur. The writer of Genesis 1 didn't know, what a plant was or what an animal was, and maybe didn't even understand that photosynthesis is a thing.
Well,
Maybe?
I mean, ancient people at least knew that plants needed the sun. Like they knew that you couldn't just
Yeah.
leave a plant on the inside of a house
But,
and have it thrive.
I mean, they also I think by the within their worldview, they probably would also say that human beings need the sun.
yeah, and they definitely don't in the same way that plants do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They do though. You will get very severe
Correct,
rickets
yes.
if you don't get any sunlight.
I need vitamin D, and I'm not getting a lot of it because I don't go outside much these days, so I have to take supplements.
Yeah.
Mhm.
All right, Fate to Gray, Justice for Elhanan. That's part of the screen name. For
Yes!
$5.
Yes, justice for Elchanan!
Says, let me
True
be
killer of
explicit.
Goliath.
Let me be explicit. Ross says things that can invoke strong feelings about the truthfulness of his his statements with the correct minds.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right?
Yeah.
Yep. Totally.
Now we're
right.
having some strong feelings right now.
Look, the thing is, I think Ross believes what he's saying. I don't think Ross is lying. I think Ross has a lot of cognitive biases that are leading him to make these statements.
I mean, look,
That's
I'm
my
just going to
polite way
say,
to put that.
he sure has a lot of audacity to just look at the text and go, it's explicit. I'm just going to ignore it.
Yeah.
All right, well, here we go.
Because there's research that's been done by historians of science documenting that the birth of the scientific method came from the pages of Scripture and from Reformation
Wrong.
theology.
No, it didn't. Look, the scientific method is an outgrowth of Enlightenment philosophy that was looking back at Greco-Roman philosophy, especially philosophy to do with the natural world. Now, it is true that many of the people who founded various branches of modern science were in fact Christians, and they did have theological backing
By
that they
default.
came up with. Well, yeah, by default.
Mhm.
That they did have theological reasons as to why they thought that what they were doing was a reasonable thing to do. But the thing is, that is not the same thing as them getting it from the Bible, because here's the thing.
They weren't reading the book of fucking Job
No.
and going, "Hey, here's the secret decoder ring
Look, guys,
to the book of Genesis."
we got Job, and now that lets us interpret Genesis, and now we know about the nebular hypothesis of solar system formation. Yeah. So,
Scientific
It's
method.
so weird that it took them so long to figure out heliocentrism, though, because I thought the Bible was explicit.
yeah. But here's another thing. Something being theologically justified according to your version of Christian theology is not the same thing as you got it from the Bible. Because that's not how Christian theology has ever worked, ever. Even in the groups that say that they get all of their theology from the Bible, that's not actually true. because a lot of the ways that they read their theology into the Bible only make sense because of their extra biblical theological traditions, that they don't even notice our assumptions that they're bringing into the Bible because they've been so long ingrained in their thought process about the Bible. But it has never been the case that Christians just went and said, the Bible says this, therefore that's part of my theology now. That's never been how it worked. Sorry. Vandalia in 1998 for $5 says, plant ancestors said, quote, let's kidnap cyanobacteria and make them create food for us, end quote. Correct. That is basically the origin of the chloroplast. I was having trouble getting the word chloroplast into my brain. I don't know why. All right, here we go. Let's get a little bit more.
Well, let me stop you there because boy, there's a whole lot I would have covered there. But
yeah,
you said
that's
quite
true.
a bit.
There is a whole lot.
There's a whole lot.
And
Wow.
whenever you bring an expert witness to the stand to testify, the first among many different parts of the test to determine whether or not the science behind or the conclusions that an expert witness gives is you have to lay a proper foundation. And one of those foundations is, did you actually employ a recognized or valid and peer-reviewed method
For biblical interpretation? No, he did not.
Wow. No, he did not.
Yeah. That is not a recognized method for biblical interpretation.
for your
This
conclusions?
I think maybe it's because I'm not as familiar on the in the broader spectrum of the kinds of apologetics that Hugh Ross does, but my sense is that Hugh Ross actually has a pretty unique, untested, that is non-peer reviewed method to approaching the text. Like, it's super. I'll say this much: it's among the more creative.
I would agree with you there.
Interpretive methods.
Mm-hmm. That's a nice way to put that.
To the
That
text.
is very nice of you to say.
And listen, I love
Everyone's so creative.
I love creativity, and I'm not saying that you shouldn't do this. What I am saying though is that you need to envelope your method in theology. Like, Hugh Ross needs to just come straight out and go, listen, everyone, what I'm doing here is theology.
Yeah.
This is the ways in which I am appropriating the text by a completely foreign method for getting it to the point of supporting my preconditioned worldview. I don't know. I didn't say that really well.
I'll give Hugh Ross this. He makes way more sense than the octotheism guy.
Chat.
Well, yeah. But Hugh Ross makes way more sense than the octotheism guy.
Octotheism.
In case everyone doesn't know, at one point, Vishanti found a guy on YouTube who was saying that, like, he had found out through these matrices that he'd pulled out of biblical text that there were actually 8 spirits of God, and that the members of the Holy Trinity from standard Christianity were actually only 3 of the different 8, and that Satan also had his own 8 different persons inside of his own anti-theism thing. And
You're welcome.
he recently released a
This
video.
is why he doesn't ask me to find him videos anymore.
He actually released a video recently asking for encouragement because all the people asking him if he was okay and suggesting that he get mental health treatment was really getting him down.
Wow.
Yeah. To which I thought about commenting, hey, maybe you should take that not as a sign of people hating on you, but being concerned for your well-being. But then I realized he's not going to like that. I'm just going to stop. I'm not going to do it. So I did think about actually featuring him on here to talk about, like, how not to read any text.
Yeah, y'all
included.
don't know. There's a whole nother level. Like, this is time. Like Jillian is saying, it's time cube levels of cray cray.
It really is time.
Octotheism.
Yeah, it makes as much sense as a time cube. I read his quote unquote paper that he released as, I think, like, just a PDF that you could download. It was incomprehensible. Just completely nutbag nonsense. So we are far from the bottom of the barrel in terms of, like, are you sure this makes sense in terms of your biblical interpretation? In fact, I would say that as long as this is your personal interpretation for devotional and theological
Yeah.
use, I'm okay
Yeah.
with this interpretation. Whatever, have fun with it.
Exactly.
But it's
Exactly.
not
Meanwhile,
a counter to what Tyson just
me
said.
and Sarah and possibly Don Giovanni are sitting over in our little corner with the Pardes method, and we'll just be fine. Leave us alone.
Mhm.
We're good.
And to sort of come full circle here, let me just throw it out there and say I am patiently waiting, Hugh Ross, to see that that publication about your methodology in a relevant peer-reviewed journal.
Well, let's get a little bit more in,
so that I can actually review it.
Let's get a little bit more in, and then we'll be done for the day. And if people are liking this, and if you two are liking this, maybe next week we can come back and we can continue taking a look at how Hugh Ross continues to show that Neil deGrasse Tyson was right, while still pretending that he's disagreeing with him.
In other words, is it actual science? Are you doing something that comports with the scientific method in terms of generally accepted principles? And if you veer off from that, you have to justify why.
Time out. Kip and I can't do it next week because we're going to be at SBL.
Yeah, it's true.
I will have something else for next week.
Maybe the week after that.
Week after that, yeah.
Yeah.
So, but listen, on that, I have to say this, because it sort of raises to my mind the question of I don't know. I'm thinking it just made me think of Jeff Goldblum in the original Jurassic Park. You never stopped to ask the question of whether you should
do
this.
You're so
right?
preoccupied with whether or not you could. You didn't stop to ask.
Why are we?
He's doing the
applying
exact
the
same
scientific method.
He's doing the exact thing that Tyson said that people do when they want to be people who are going to take the Bible as an authoritative, at least in their mind, religious text, while being believers in Christianity, and also be scientifically minded, which is that they reinterpret the parts of the Bible that are at odds with the scientific consensus. Or at least that part of the scientific consensus that they can't reject. Because remember, Hugh Ross doesn't actually do this with all of the Bible, because he will absolutely reject the scientific consensus around much of biology, because he doesn't see that in the Bible. He knows too much about cosmology, basically. He knows too much about his field to take seriously the parts of the Bible that contradict his field. But because, as far as I can tell, he just doesn't know that much about biology, and doesn't seem to care that much. And also because I think he has theological commitments that make it a little bit harder to reject those parts of the Bible. He just rejects that part of science. So he's in a weird halfway place. Like, Ken Ham will reject just about anything from science that he thinks he can, and which is almost all of science. In fact, but even then, he doesn't reject the globe Earth. The only consistent biblical literalists, who are even close to consistent, actually, because they're not fully consistent, are flurfs. If you're not a religiflurf, if you're not a Christian flat earther, you are rejecting the plain meaning of some part of the Bible in favor of science.
But also, I would like to additionally quote Ian Malcolm from Jurassic Park in reference to this entire video that we've been watching. That is one big pile of shit.
Hey, you got that from Vadim Radcheko.
He said apologetics.
Okay.
At least he got some recognition for having got some. All right, everybody. So let's start wrapping things up. So, what should we look forward to from either of you here on the internet?
Listen, as Vish mentioned, this weekend both of us are going to be in sunny San Diego for the annual meeting of the Society of Biblical Literature, and I am
San Diego in
kind of working on trying to do some live stuff from the conference if I can.
Nice.
So look for that. We actually have a Hebrew reading stream scheduled for Thursday, which my intention is to participate in live from Joel Karitko's hotel room where I will be staying. Probably with Joel.
Nice.
So, but again, it's that might be a little touch and go because my flight gets in at 3. So it gives us a couple hours.
I
But so
mean,
that there's going to be other things though. I am committed to trying to do some other things. Something that I'm also looking at doing is there is going to be, I don't know if you guys remember, there was this YouTube documentary that dropped, or YouTube film. I don't know. I get a weird vibe about calling anything on YouTube a documentary, but
Fair.
there's like this YouTube film that dropped like a year ago called Satan's Guide to the Bible.
it was so good.
It's so good. You should watch it. But
good.
the
It's a hoot.
there is going to be an actual review panel of this film at the Society of Biblical Literature meeting on Monday. And prior to that, on the Sunday evening, Satan has arranged for live screenings of the documentary. There's going to be a whole big reception and everything. And I'm going to be there with my fellow Diablo critics, Dan McClellan,
And McClellan. Mm-hmm.
and Dr. Jennifer Bird. And maybe I haven't sorted out all the
Matt.
details, but maybe we can figure out how to do a stream from
cool.
from the lobby. I think that would be fun. So
That would be cool.
we'll see. But all that to say, just look for, we'll probably try and do some stuff.
And Kip's YouTube channel
next
is linked
weekend.
in the description. Go subscribe.
And if I can sort of say a couple more things, Dapper, I've got an interview with archaeologist from Israeli archaeologist, Syro-Palestinian archaeologist Amahai Mazar, that I did with my friend and colleague, Dr. Joshua Bowen, all about the state of Canaan at the end of the Bronze Age and the beginning of the Iron Age. And I've got another long interview with that I did with my friend Dan McClellan. We sat down with Dr. Heath Durrell, who literally wrote the book on child sacrifice in ancient Israel. The title of the book is Child Sacrifice in Ancient Israel. And we had a 2-hour conversation about this. I'm in the process of editing those videos now, so those are going to be up on my channel hopefully within the next 3 or 4, maybe 5 weeks. And one more final thing, I am last night Dr. Josh and I just did voice recordings with Apologia for a mega video that we're producing on slavery in the Bible.
Nice. All right. My Unfinished Journey for $2 says, "Hi, gang." So, hello. Also, Vishanti, you got anything that's coming up that you want people to know about?
I am also going to be preparing to go to San Diego for SBL.
Mhm.
I actually am a member of the Society of Biblical Literature. I'm just not going officially to the convention. I'll be in and out of hanging around.
You're like a
But
convention
if you're in
groupie.
San Diego,
She'll be in.
I'll be in whatever. Shh. So if you are in San Diego next weekend and you want to meet any of us, just reach out. We're arranging meetups. Some of Dan McClellan's Discord server / YouTube folks will be there. We're tentatively planning Saturday night dinner time. So that's not for surezies, but that's where we're kind of aiming for. So yeah, if you're within driving or travel distance, feel free to drop in and say hello. And I may or may not be able to stream or record some stuff going on at SBL. I will do what I can. And yeah, it's just this last couple weeks. The reason that I didn't finish doing my Doctor Strange comic review, which I owe to Joshua Geese, is I have been hella depressed, just being honest. I don't like getting super vulnerable on the stream, but I have not been doing well. So if any of you are feeling charitable, I have a link to my wish list, and there also, if you really want it, there's a link to my PayPal if you want to help support me, because I'm having a rough go of it. 2024 has not been kind to ya girl. So that's about all I got. I can't end that on a happy note, because that's just me
okay.
being
I will
completely transparent.
I'll just cover in
Sorry.
with what I've got coming up.
Wah-wah.
So, what's coming up here on this channel? On Tuesday, we are going to be doing Matt with Maddie. I have confirmed with Maddie as of the 12th that she will be doing Matt with Maddie this week. So I will be, sending her more messages to say like, hey, just a reminder. So that will be, I believe we're still on Matt Powell, one of those. Also, I believe at some point this month, I'm still not sure when.
You should get off. Sorry, you should get off of Matt Powell.
Well, we will, but then we'll just go to.
gross.
Then we're just going to go to Raw Matt, so it doesn't help.
Uncooked Matthew.
Yeah. So anyway, at some point this month, I'm not exactly sure when, but I should be on one of the daily streams that Craig from FTFE is doing this month, and I'm going. My plan is to introduce him to the Young Earth Mats, because I told him last night, like, you have the Flat Earth Nathans over there, but over in Young Earth Creationism
the Flat
land,
Earth Nathans.
we have
That's
the Young
right.
Earth Mats, and they're basically a mirror image to the Flat
Yep,
Earth Nathans.
It's true.
So I'm going to introduce him to both Matt Powell and Raw Matt, and it's going to be
God.
amazing. I told Craig that Matt Powell had pulled a full JM truth, thinking that the sun needed oxygen, so there must be air wherever the sun is. Otherwise, the sun wouldn't have oxygen to burn because it's on fire, and fire needs oxygen.
Right. A fire needs oxygen, right?
Well, the fire needs
Exactly.
oxygen. Oh man.
So yeah,
That's so
Oh.
cool. I
Um,
love it. Oh,
so that's-
so is that wait. I'm just sorry because I'm slow. So this is like we know the sun is inside the atmosphere of the
So-
earth because it needs oxygen.
Yeah,
to burn?
really. So there
That's-
you go. There's the
that's
air for the
JM.
fire.
That's JM Truth's point.
Oh, that's
Matt
awesome.
Powell isn't a flat earther, so he just thinks that space is suffused with air that has oxygen in it.
Why? Like
I-
what's
because
if it's
otherwise
not
the
a
sun would
flat
go
earth,
out.
right? Oh man. Oh boy.
Look, Matt Powell is a
adorable.
profoundly dumb individual. He
Yeah.
does not understand anything about the way the world works, for the most part.
I rewatched the clip that Red's Rhetoric and what's his face that does the special effects that won an Emmy. Where they totally punked JM Truth. And were
Oh,
like,
yeah.
we found the missing 30 seconds or whatever, and they showed it to him live, and he just couldn't.
Yeah, that
He
one.
couldn't
was
process
pretty
that
good.
he had been had. Oh, glory!
All because they
It was
actually
good.
there was a plant in JM Truth's server that was feeding him bullshit
Yep.
about the clip, and
and
JM
he just took it
belie-
at their word
Yep.
and said, "Oh no, I verified it." Like you
didn't check a thing. Anyway, so that's at some nebulous point later on this month, presumably. Then on Thursday, we're going to be doing a premiere, and I'm going to double check what the premiere is so I don't lie to you about what it is. Let's go. It is going to be, yes. So on the 21st, Evolution and Exegesis, chatting with a creationist that is a Jackson Wheat mirror. Basically, it started out doing a lot of Young Earth creationism stuff, and then it just went into how to read the Bible at a very basic level, because apparently this guy was not doing a good job with that. So that is this Wednesday. I believe that's about a 2-hour thing. So bring a snack. Then on Friday, over on Top Hats Off, we're going to be doing episode 8 of Star Trek Lexington. It is going to be Abyss Station. If you saw the intermission, you know the basics. But yeah, the crew of the Lexington has been sent to investigate a alien space station circling around a world that itself is orbiting a black hole. And weird things have been going on with that black hole, and Starfleet has lost contact with a survey team that had been sent there earlier. So their mission is to try to save the survey team, assuming they're in trouble, because they probably are, and also to figure out what the heck's going on with the station and the black hole and why there's nonsense going on there. So that's on Friday. That, of course, is with a number of people who are either in my chat or who are other YouTubers that I've collaborated with, including Craig from FTFE, and Shesh and Jordan from Reason to Doubt. Then on Saturday, I will be doing something, and it won't be with Kip or Vishanti.
Hey, Kip.
Hey,
Show
what?
off the big doggo that you're playing fetch with.
The big doggo? Digger.
The big
Come here.
doggo.
Let's see if this works. Digger. Come here. Come on. Jump up. Jump up.
Almost in frame.
Look at him. He's like,
He's-
I'm not
you can
sure.
see his
They can see his
face.
nose.
Yeah.
There he is.
Oh, look at that
See if
snoot.
we can- Oh,
Oh, there it is. All right.
Help.
Well, everybody, for those of you who are interested, I am going to be heading over to my Discord server. We're going to watch 4 episodes of Power Rangers RPM. We are as of today, we're going to be past the halfway point with Power Rangers RPM. And so I also, as a spoiler, when we get to the next season, which is Samurai, we're going to be doing 5 episodes on 1.25 because I'm not going to do 44 episodes at real time of Power Rangers Samurai. It's just not going to happen. It's not a very good couple seasons. So.
Oh my God!
Digital Hammurabi in the chat just says, "Can I be honest? Having Dr. Kip Davis on your show, he's been thoroughly debunked. It's just a mark against your humanity."
That's a good point.
Just ask inspiring philosophy. I am not
to be trusted.
Fit.
No.
Not to be.
Hey
not
Josh,
to be trusted,
pull up to SBL this weekend. I'll be there.
Nice. All right. Well,
yeah.
with that,
Where are
everybody,
you going to be?
I hope you all have a wonderful rest of your weekend. Stay safe out there. Hey, get your vaccines now, because who knows? Maybe they're going away in a few months. If you're a United Statesian.
Oh.
Bye, everybody. Hey, before you leave, I just want to take a second to thank my patrons and channel members, especially those pledging $20 or above. Benthoven, Thurevara, Tapioca Weasel, Whispers, Elron Teller, Ian Chen, Calvin Brostick von Manen, Landon Knoll, Mabbity Babbity, Sphincter of Doom, Flawless, Edwin M., North Texas Fossils, John Ackerman, and Strawberry Vein. It's because of my channel members and patrons whom you're seeing on screen that this channel can stay afloat. Without you, it would all shut down. If you want to join the team, there's a link to join the channel below this video, and there's a link to join the Patreon in the description. On the Patreon, you can get a 10% discount for pledging annually, and either way, you get early access to virtually all of my scripted videos, often 3 to 5 months before they come out for the general public. Thanks for watching.